Welcome back to Outward Home Learning. The subject's computer science, and today we're looking at network hardware. So there's a number of different pieces of network hardware you need to know about. To tell us more about it, we're going to go over to Mr. Halton, who'll explain what they are and what they do. Then you'll have some tasks to complete. Over to Mr. Halton.
If you ever required to put together a network, then you're going to need hardware to be able to do it. But let's answer that first question. What is hardware? Well, hardware is something that you can physically touch. So, for example, I can touch maybe the microphone in front of me right now. I can touch the keyboard here. I can touch the mouse. I can do things like that. They are all examples of hardware. What I can't touch is Microsoft Windows, because that's software that's inside the computer. But hardware I can physically touch, and that's what we're focusing on at the moment today. How can I connect a PC on a network to another PC and maybe to the internet as well? All right, so here's our PC. The very first thing that every device on a network needs is this. It's a network interface card, a NIC. Okay, and without that, you're just not able to connect to a network. Now, it could be that that network interface card uses a wireless sort of transmitter to connect to the network, or it could be via a cable, which is what we're going to focus on here. But without the NIC, you cannot access the network. All right. And let's just pretend this PC is connected by cable, and that's worth mentioning as well. How you communicate messages between the actual transmission medium is really important as well. So here I'm using a cable. Like I said, I could use radio signals, but here I'm just using an Ethernet cable. Okay, where's that going to? So we've got our computer, we've got a network interface card, and we've got a cable going somewhere. Where's it going to? Well, if you're using a star topology in particular, which is one of the most common topologies in like schools and offices, then it will be connecting to this device here called a switch. And what a switch does is it connects devices within a network, that's important to say, together. So look, this switch has got another cable sticking out of it. It's got another network interface card attached to another PC here, and that is our network. I've connected two or more computers together, so I've got a network there. So if I wanted to send a message from A up here to B down there, then I would send a message from that network interface card down to the switch. It knows it's going to be because of IP addressing and MAC addressing, so have a look at that video if you wish to, and it sends the message to B there. All right, so that's our basics. We've got network interface card, switch, and some sort of transmission medium. But that's a fairly limited network, isn't it? I can have a few of these, just like you probably do in your school. I could have like easily 30 of these in a classroom, or in fact, I can connect together hundreds of computers this way. But I probably want to connect to a different network. I probably want to have access to the biggest network of all, which is the internet. So how do I do that? Well, I need something called a router to be able to do that. So you need a router to connect to a different network. Now, that's a big difference between a switch and a router. It's a subtle one, but it's an important difference. So a switch connects devices within a network. A router connects networks together, and it does that by routing packets to the correct destination, or packets of data. So, for example, I might have a router here that is connected to the internet, which I'm just going to do as a cloud sort of down here. So you get the idea that I've got a network and networks going on down here. Then if you imagine maybe at your house, you will have another router. We probably call it the Wi-Fi router here. And then that will connect somehow to your PC. But let's say this time it's going to be wirelessly. Okay, so this one's going to connect wirelessly to your PC. There's not going to be a cable involved. You've still got a network interface card, but it's communicating via radio signals. All right. Now, if I wanted to send a message from A over here, so this one, to C this time, so this one on the new network, look what happens. We go down here, we send a message down to the switch. The switch, recognizing that this is a message which is needs to be sent outside of the network, then passes that to the router. So this goes out here because a router connects the networks together. That goes off to the internet, which has got loads of routers in it, which will eventually direct it to this router here in your house. And then that will transmit the message to your computer here, so it's computer C. So that's the way it goes. If you're going across networks, you're dealing with routers. The only thing worth mentioning is this router here is probably going to be your home router, which you will call a Wi-Fi router. Now that is a wireless access point. So that lets you connect wirelessly to a network. So it lets you use phones, it lets you use tablets, lets you use laptops or even PCs, obviously with wireless network cards. You need a wireless access point to be able to communicate wirelessly. So in this sort of scenario, this network interface card is acting as a wireless access point as well. So they're your critical bits of network hardware. You've got a PC, network interface card, a switch, router, and a wireless access point, and it's all connected together by these transmission mediums. If you remember all that and what they do, you're all set.
So it's now time for your first task. For the first task, you need to complete the table and identify each piece of network hardware with the correct description. So if you want to open up that first task, you're going to get around 10 minutes to complete that, and then we will review your answers. Off you go. Hopefully you had enough time to complete that task. We're now going to go to Mr. Barnes to review those answers.
Right then, let's have a look at this activity for network hardware. So what you needed to do was complete the table below with the name of each network hardware component. So read the description and decide which hardware component it is talking about. So let's get started. So we've got here, allows for data to be sent using a telephone network. It converts signals from analog to digital. Well, there's only two pieces of network hardware that deal with the telephone network. That is a router and a modem. So the answer is modem, because a modem converts the analog telephone line into digital signals so the computer can understand. So it modulates and demodulates, and that's where the word modem comes from. So we've got all devices require this to connect to a network. It can be wired or wireless. Well, that is a network interface card, or a NIC, as we often refer to it as. So every device must have one of these to connect to a network. Smartphones have them, laptops have them, PCs have them. They're in different shapes and sizes, but they all must have either a wired or wireless, or even both, to be able to connect to a network. So now we've got used to connect to the internet, receives data packets from the internet and directs them to computers on a network. Well, I said there was only two devices that have access to the telephone network and subsequently the internet. So we've used modem, so that means this needs to be a router. So a router connects to the internet using the telephone line. It receives the packets and directs the packets to the right place at the right time and finds the most efficient route possible. So next we've got connects many devices together, receives data packets and sends them to all devices on a network. Well, that is what a hub does. A hub receives data from one device, and instead of working out exactly which device to send it to, it will broadcast it to all of them, and that's because it doesn't store the IP address. So it can't identify each device individually, it just knows that they are on that network. So then we've got connect multiple devices together, receives data packets and directs them only to their destination by using their IP address. So this is very similar to a hub, but this time it stores their IP address so it can send the data to the correct place. And that is a switch. Okay, so they do work very similarly. Neither of them provide internet access, and that's really important to know, but a switch only sends data to the correct place, and that also reduces traffic on the network. And then finally we've got allows for devices to wirelessly connect to a wired network, and that is a wireless access point. And a wireless access point can be plugged into something like a switch, which doesn't provide wireless access, to then allow wireless access to that network. And there are your answers for the network hardware activity.
So it's now time for you to complete your exam style question. There's two questions here. You're going to get 10 minutes to complete them, and as ever you'll get an opportunity to review those afterwards. 10 minutes starting now. So that's time up. Finally, we're going to go over to Mr. Barnes to review those. Please make sure that you correct your answers if you did get anything not quite right.
Right then, let's have a look at these exam questions as part of our deliberate practice. These ones are all based around network hardware. So we've got a company have a set of laptops that they want to connect together to form a network. Identify one hardware device that would be needed to connect laptops to the internet. So here you've got two options. There's only two pieces of hardware that we talk about that give access to the internet. I'm going to go with the one that we most of us will have in our house, which is a router. Okay, moving on to the second part of the question then. It says identify two additional piece of hardware that the company could use to set up a network and describe what each piece of hardware would be used for within the network. So we've got 4 marks. So we identify two pieces of hardware for 2 marks and then say what they do for another 2 marks. Okay, so I'm going to start with each device needs a network interface card to allow the device to connect to a network using Wi-Fi or wired with Ethernet. Okay, so I've identified the device, network interface card, and then said what it will be used for. The next one is you could have a switch. This connects devices together and uses their IP address to send data to the correct location. Okay. And we've got one more question, which is a nice short question, so we'll answer that and then go through all the answers. So we've got here the following diagram shows how computers in Mr. Singh's office are connected to each other to form a LAN. State the name of the device which connects the server to the internet. Okay, so a name of device A. So we need to say, what is this device here? Well, it could be, again, one of two things. We've sort of come across this in the first question. I'm going to go for the other option this time, just so we've covered them all off, and I'm going to say you could use a modem. Right, now let's go through these answers. So, the first question then was identify one hardware device that would be needed to connect to the internet. So you've got two answers here. You could have said modem or router. Okay, if you said like Wi-Fi hub or anything like that, that's technically incorrect. I know companies refer to their routers as like home hubs and stuff, but technically that is incorrect. Okay, so the next one then was identify two additional pieces of hardware that could be used. So the answer cannot be router, or if you said modem in the first answer, it cannot be modem. Okay, you can't repeat the answers. So let's have a look at what we've got and go through all the possible answers. So I've said each device needs a network interface card to allow the device to connect to a network. So we've got NIC, which is network interface card, for 1 mark. And it says here to connect the Ethernet cable to the computer. So I said to allow a device to connect to a network using Wi-Fi or wired with Ethernet. So that's perfect. The other point I've made is a switch. So if we look a little bit further down, and then we'll look through the other answers in a second. Switch is there, perfect. This connects devices together and uses their IP address to send data to the correct location. So it says here to connect multiple devices together. So I've already said that. And direct traffic to its destination, or direct traffic to its destination. So my answer is perfect. It's 4 marks, which is great. Other answers you could have had. You could have, if you said modem in the first answer, you could have had router, and that is to use to be receive and transmit data within the network and to send data or join networks together and connect to the internet. We could have had bridge to connect networks together. You could have had hub, which also connects multiple devices together a bit like a switch, but does work differently as it sends the data to everyone. You could have had server to store or manage the network, wireless access point to allow for wireless transmission or wireless devices to connect, cables to connect devices together, or modem if you've not said it in the first part of the question, which is to connect computers together via telephone lines and convert digital data to analog, and so on, and vice versa. And then finally, if I move this up, the last question was state the device which connects the server to the internet. Well, same question as question 1 really. This mark scheme is allowing router, modem, which is what I've got, or it says ADSL adapter, although they're a little bit extinct now. Okay, so there are your answers, all about network hardware with our deliberate practice.
And that's what you need to know about network hardware. They're really important ones to keep consistently reviewing so that you can remember them when it comes to your exam.